we're talking about what's happening in the 731 on the Hub City Now with your host, Tyrone Tony Reed Jr.
Hello and welcome to Hub City Now. I'm your host, Tyrone Tony Reed Jr. And today we have with us David Hicks, the Executive Director of the Midwest Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross. Thank you for being here today, David.
Thank you so much, Tony. Appreciate it.
The first thing I want to start off with is that when I went to your website, American Red Cross, it said that 90% of the Red Cross workforce are volunteers.
Yes, that's an amazingly high percentage statistic. It catches a whole bunch of people off guard.
Right.
But when we say that we are driven by our volunteers and funded by our donors, we mean it literally. And what you will discover in the Red Cross is some of the most passionate and committed volunteer base that I've ever come across. And I've been fortunate to have served in a couple of different nonprofit, arenas, the Boy Scouts, which I have nothing but very favorable things to say about my experience there. Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which also was and is a dynamic ministry. But I would put the volunteers of American Red Cross up against any base that I've come across, and that's saying quite a bit.
Right. How did you get involved with American Red Cross?
Tony, it actually came down to some friends of my family. They were aware that I was transitioning out as the area director of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and was just really looking for a new and different opportunity to provide some directorship to another organization. And they realized that the executive director role had become vacant for the local chapter, the Midwest Tennessee chapter, and just kind of put that bug in my ear. And I had heard enough very favorable things about the Red Cross. I have a heart for ministry. That's at the core of who I am and what I am. And my faith is very important to me. And I began to think about how, when I think of Red Cross, I think about the hands and feet of Christ.
Right.
And so I thought, man, that would be an outstanding ministry opportunity, although it's not necessarily considered or labeled a ministry verbatim. And as I pursued it further, I began to meet with some of those very volunteers that we've made reference to, and was just more than impressed with not only their heart for the area, but their willingness to just pack up and go and be deployed to go to other states, other countries if need be.
And that's exactly what we're called in the ministry to do.
Absolutely.
Is to go and help others and leave our home. I mean, when Jesus went and got his disciples, they stopped what they were doing and went and helped.
Absolutely. Yeah, here I am, send me. And so I always think back to that passage. And as I began to look a little further into the executive director role, I realized that it was going to give me an opportunity to demonstrate some of my stronger suits, some of my stronger gifts in leadership, but also it would help me to strengthen some of my weaker ones.
Right.
And so it just seemed like a right fit. And after obviously some prayer and consulting with some mentors, I jumped in. And so here we are, almost 2 months into it. So as I tell my buddies, I know enough to be dangerous right now.
And so, as the executive director, the Midwest Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross currently serves Benton County, Carroll County, Chester County, Crockett, Decatur, Gibson, Hardeman, Hardin, Haywood, Henderson, Henry, Madison, McNairy, and Weakley County.
Yeah, that's 14. I wish we had more.
I was going to say, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Tongue in cheek.
How is it providing for 14 counties like that?
It is a stretch, and that's putting it mildly. That is really ultimately going back to what you said. We are in such dire need of volunteers. We literally have a position that I try to fill in each and every county that is a volunteer lead role. And they're kind of the right-hand men and women that can be the liaison for me in any one of these counties.
Right.
And I say liaison for me, actually it's for our entire staff. There's one other paid staff member, and that's Heather Carbajal, and her specific role is disaster program manager.
Okay.
So when you talk about meeting the needs when you're up against it, and needing shelter and additional food and, personal hygiene items. She is the one that's orchestrating all of that care and coordinating all of that, shelter opportunity.
Right.
So she serves, as I said, as disaster program manager. We also have a volunteer. How in the world the guy didn't get paid, I'll never know. He sticks around anyway. But he is by far our lead volunteer, and his name is Dave Brumley.
Okay.
And Dave's official title, or I should say one of his official titles, is government liaison.
Okay.
And so he is at the forefront of all we do toward our recruiting efforts with volunteers, even helping set up some of our classes and training that we do. He's very instrumental in that. But these community volunteer leaders are the ones that help to kind of create and recruit a team within a given county. Because obviously, I just can't be everywhere at once.
Right. If a tornado happens in Benton County and their flood happens in Madison, then
that's it. We got to divide and conquer.
Right.
We truly do.
Right.
And so we have, like I said earlier, some of the most committed and passionate volunteers. But we need more. And that's one of the reasons I'm here with you today is we want to be sure and get that word out, how we can recruit additional volunteers. And we know there are hearts of people that want to serve, that hear our voice and will see this clip.
Right.
And we want to make sure we align with some more of those type people.
Right. You mentioned classes. What kind of classes do you all currently offer?
One of the key classes we're offering at the moment is people, as you would imagine, even with the most recent Louisiana flooding, the wildfires of California. There's even some tornado situations that we're having to help deal with, some of the destruction on the other side of that. We are offering disaster shelter training over the next month. And we've got some different opportunities we're trying to get scheduled even now. That's one class.
Well, and what is that about? What does that
that'll
entail?
give volunteers an opportunity to understand what role they might play in a shelter when we would deploy them out, and they would understand when they, kind of hit the ground, how to hit it running.
Okay.
How to, register those that are coming in, families that have been displaced, that have gone through some very traumatic, hardships, and to know how to be sensitive to those emotional needs. And then once they're there, how to get them in, their area of the shelter for their cots and their personal hygiene items, the meals that are helped provided through the Southern Baptist Convention. We do a partnership with them. So it just gives them kind of a one-stop shopping, if you will, training for how to be involved and to perform in a shelter. And there's another class we have that's just more or less an overview of all of our types of disaster training, so that they'll know, during the night there's a home fire in a local community, how to go out and help, assess the damage, how to help them find shelter for the evening for that family. And then, of course, what we're always known for, the classic ones of CPR and first aid, those will never go away. We want to make sure those are always offered in our building, our brick and mortar building, but then also where we host it in facilities outside of our office area.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about the Louisiana flooding and things that you can do to help others who are in need. Because we're Tennessee, and, hey, we're the volunteer state, so we should be volunteering. So we'll be right back.
As a former NFL football player, I never thought I would let this happen to me. I knew I had to do something. Thanks to VIP's weight loss and testosterone programs, I'm in the best shape of my life. I feel better, I look better, and live a healthier life.
Hello and welcome back to Hub City Now. I'm your host, Tyrone Tony Reed Jr., and we're here again with David Hicks, the Executive Director of the Midwest Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross. Say that 9 times fast. We're going to talk
Good job,
about.
by the way.
Thank you. We're going to talk about the local programs and services. We've already talked about the emergency and disaster response and preparedness education and health and safety classes. What are some of the other programs that people might not readily know about that they should know about?
Well, Tony, I do appreciate you asking me about that. You know, oftentimes, and I was just as guilty, when you would think of the Red Cross, you think about, overseas, and you think about these, disasters and earthquakes, and you'd see the cross on the coats and the vests. But actually, right here locally, we offer a lot of service that people it's kind of flown under their radar. A couple of those things that I'll make mention of is we have what we call DAT teams. Now, I didn't say that teams, DAT teams. Yeah, and not bat teams, not throwing a little love at Batman here. But they're called DAT teams after disaster action teams.
Okay.
And what that is, it's first responder opportunities for home fires that occur within our 14-county radius. It could be flooding that's occurred, but anything just unforeseen happening in a moment where a sense of urgency is there and time is of the essence. And so we ask local people, volunteers, to come in and be trained to be a part of the DAT team network. And we send them out at least 2 at a time, sometimes as many as 4 or 5, depending on
how many volunteers you have.
Yeah, and exactly, and what the number of workforce we got is. But that's one I would be sure to mention, and that's called wanting to get in the trenches.
Okay.
I mean, that's wanting to go right out. Now, you're not going to run in the burning house, but you'll be there right on the other side of the fire department, and you'll be there to help, offer shelter. We even have some, financial gift cards that we offer the families, and that's something that we, get them to disperse while they're on the scene.
Now, with that, do you all have like partnerships with certain hotels or that help you all out?
We do, and then there's some hotels that it's not necessarily an ongoing kind of collaborative effort. They just step up in the moment. We have some local, shelters, bed and breakfasts that we just hadn't had anybody turn us down. And it's been an amazing thing and a great ongoing community partnership of give and take. But when you talk about the DAT teams, you're really talking about reactionary measure. We want to talk preventative. And so when we talk about preventative, we need volunteers to go with us on fire alarm installations. We actually do a combined effort with local fire departments to go out, and we'll just knock on doors, canvass neighborhoods, and ask people, hey, we're here on a given Saturday. We're going to be back in a week. Could we come in your house and give you brand new fire alarms?
And does this cost anything?
It doesn't cost a dime. It's all free installation. And it's a great opportunity for the volunteers to get to know the local fire departments better. And it's just great to see the enthusiasm on the faces of these, homeowners. When we come in, we just sit down, have fellowship with them while 2 or 3 do the business, and take care of what's needed. And there's even an ongoing statistic. I can't give you the numbers right here, right now without cheat sheet, but there's a certain amount of lives saved that have been based on the number of fire alarms that are being installed all over the communities of our 14-county radius. And so we're so proud to see that we are literally saving the lives of family and even pets when it comes to these fire alarms being installed. So that's another one I would mention. Another one that really goes to the heart of the teachers in the community and those that have a teaching spirit is what we call the Pillowcase Project. This is targeted for 3rd through 5th graders, and it's where we actually go into local schools, after-school programs, churches, and their children's ministries. And what we noticed was during Katrina and during all the catastrophic event that was, a lot of the kids, when they would arrive at the shelter, had pillowcases that they'd thrown whatever they could salvage last minute as they were walking out or running out the doors of their homes. And so we just began to think about incorporating that into a name of an ongoing preventative program. So we call it Pillowcase Project. And it gives these kids a chance to be given pillowcases that are decorated with all these Disney characters. We actually have a partnership with Disney that helped to kind of get this thing aligned.
That's awesome.
And in the pillowcase is all these things that they would need, these essentials, as they are grabbing items running out the door. So they don't even have to think about going in the bathroom or in their closets. They just grab that pillowcase and they got what they need. So we encourage people to get involved with that. And also, if you're a church that'd be willing to let our disaster program manager, Heather Carbajal, come out and introduce these programs, the DAT team, the fire alarm installations, the pillowcase project, she'd be more than happy to set that up with you. And I'll be sure to give a contact number for that too.
Okay, that'll be great. We're going to mention blood services. So they say, but tell me about that.
Yeah, we're kind of a unique situation in that regard. Our particular chapter, our local chapter, does not offer blood services. Mm-hmm. Now, we are right around the corner from an exceptional agency, Lifeline Blood Services, mm-hmm. which many people are aware of and have been serviced by, they can vouch for. Right. But we do offer it through the Red Cross chapter out of Memphis mm-hmm. and also out of the Nashville office. And if you happen to be on the road, out of Chattanooga as well. Right. But we locally do not, but we make sure that we have a strong partnership with Lifeline and send them clients their way.
Right. All right. What about services to the armed forces and international services?
Yeah, we actually have a government liaison who I mentioned briefly earlier, mm-hmm. Dave Brumley. Mm-hmm. And what Dave does is helps us to help meet the needs of families when it comes to some of the armed forces and some of our local residents that are now, serving in the military. Okay. One of the neatest opportunities that we are given and actually given government endorsement to do is when there is a message of emergency or something of high priority that needs to make it out into a given country across, lines where battle is being done, we as the Red Cross are given endorsement to convey those messages and actually in some cases to hand deliver those messages if need be. And it's just another way that we want to go above and beyond in our appreciation and respect for those in the armed forces. We actually also have a strong collaboration with the Veterans Committee, which is here local, and we work with some of the Memphis Special Armed Forces representatives, and they come up and collaborate with us through the Veterans Committee. We're going to help in the Veterans Day Parade that'll be coming up in November. There'll be a recognition service that'll be on the eve of that at Liberty High School, and I believe that's on the 11th and the 12th. And so as that comes closer, you'll certainly hear a lot more promotion about it.
Okay. And locally, with the Louisiana flooding and things, what kind of things have been done for those things?
Well, the first thing I want to do is really, with great pride, announce we have already deployed 5 local residents. Okay. And by local, I do mean our 14 county. Right. We've had a couple out of Madison. We've had one out of Henry. I believe we've had one out of Gibson, or no, 2 out of Gibson. Okay. And so we have 5 at this point that are now serving in Louisiana in shelters. Wow. We also have about 5 additional that look to be deployed within the next week or so. As I was making mention of the training earlier, we had to get them trained first. Right. So they've been going through and kind of, going through the ropes, jumping through the hoops, and they're going to be ready to be deployed in the week to come. Okay. But in addition to that, I want to thank so many of the local residents who are giving financially. Okay. That is by far the highest priority of what we are in need of at this moment. There is a $30 million plus expense that is attached to the Louisiana flooding that Red Cross is having to offset at this point. Now, generous giving has already accumulated over $10 million of that deficit, but obviously that's quite a gap that we are still trying to cover. And before we close out, I want to make sure to tell the people where to give, how to give. We'll certainly cover that as well. But through the local giving and generosity, through the deployment, and I think it's just, Tony helped raise local awareness. We need to be disaster ready. When you look at the situation in Louisiana, that was an area that had not had that extensive flooding in over 100 years. Right. They had no strategy in place. Right. And it was almost like a no-name hurricane settled right over central Louisiana. And just kept pounding over a 24-hour period. I believe it was over 33 inches of rain. So we want to make sure our area will be prepared if such a thing unforeseen like that ever came here. Right. So we're ready to get more volunteers, and we'll get them trained.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to find out if you have what it takes to be a volunteer. We want you to be a volunteer, and if you're prepared. And we'll also find out how you can help. If you're not able to volunteer, you can donate, you can give. There are ways to do that. Very, very many ways. So we'll be right back after these messages.
As a former NFL football player, I never thought I would let this happen to me. I knew I had to do something. Thanks to VIP's weight loss and testosterone programs, I'm in the best shape of my life. I feel better, I look better, and live a healthier life.
Hello and welcome back to Hub City Now. I'm your host, Tyrone Tony Reed Jr., and we are wrapping up our show with David Hicks, the Executive Director of Midwest Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross.
Yeah.
Now comes the time that you get to participate in our conversation, and we're going to talk about ways to donate and ways to volunteer. First, let's talk about how can someone get involved in the American Red Cross?
Glad you asked, Tony. Let's do this. I'm going to give you a name, and her name is Heather Carbajal.
Okay.
I made reference to Heather a little earlier.
Right.
She is our disaster program manager.
Okay.
If you have an interest in volunteering with us, I'm going to streamline the process. I'm going to give you her cell number.
Okay.
And this is going to be the most direct line of communication with her.
Okay.
Of course, it's area code 731, and that's 571-7140.
Okay.
571-7140. What Heather will be able to do is walk you through a process of, if you would prefer to do online training, that is an option.
Okay.
There is also going to be live and in-person classes. I will say this, the online training is very effective. I would never speak against it, but I'm a big proponent of that hands-on and that synergy in a group.
Right.
It is a fantastic opportunity when you have that forum and you're learning off one another and you're sharing best practices and you're seeing the looks on those faces when people are giving you the training.
Right.
And you're seeing the passion. It's really infectious
Right.
and contagious. So Heather would be able to give you both sides of that equation and how to get involved. But she is going to be by far your best point of contact.
Okay. And how long does training last? Or take?
Typically, the live and in-person training could be 2.5 hours, could be 3 hours.
Okay.
If you do a back-to-back, you may be looking at 4 plus. But I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say we will keep your attention.
Okay.
You will not start counting the bugs on the wall or looking at the paint dry.
Right.
They are very interactive in their learning style. It is very active learning, and I think there's some role play that goes on. So you're very hands-on in the room in the moment. So a good thing.
Okay. And what are some ways that people can donate? I have here online, which would be what how would people donate online?
Yeah, man, it's as simple as redcross.org.
Okay.
When you go in on that banner page, that opening web page, you're going to see banners to choose that streamline your giving.
Okay.
And we would encourage all giving, at least for the next few weeks, to be streamlined to Louisiana flooding.
Okay.
As I said, there is a mass deficit that American Red Cross is still trying to help cover, and there's more costs to come, obviously.
And I didn't ask you this earlier, but how is the Red Cross funded?
The Red Cross is strictly donor-based.
Okay.
There is no government
subsidization
at all, subsidizing.
Right.
And I think that's a little-known fact. I think that's a major mistake. I think there's a misconception. There's the word I was looking for. I knew if I kept tackling it.
Right.
But that's a major misconception that we are government.
I think I thought that's how they operated.
Sure. And but we take great pride in saying it is exclusively based on the giving and generosity of our donors.
Okay.
And so redcross.org, you'll see the banner for Louisiana flood giving. We also want to allow for text giving, and that's simply texting the word LA Floods, LAFLOODS, to 90999, and that's to make a $10 donation per text.
Okay.
So that's another way to streamline your giving.
Okay.
And last but not least, just calling 1-800-RED Cross.
Okay.
And that's another opportunity as well.
Okay. And you all also have a way for people to give monthly.
We do.
In honor and a memory of gifts.
That's it. We receive checks on a fairly regular basis, Tony, from some different funerals that have just occurred, and the families wanting to do the wishes of those departed, and they either were maybe actively involved in the Red Cross as a volunteer, or they just appreciated from a distance what we're about and the heart of our mission.
Right. You also have corporate supporters, is that correct?
We do. Okay. And man, I tell you, we are so very indebted to the United Way and the way that they have helped promote us and helped in raising the exposure and the marketability of our campaigns. And certainly a lot of local corporations, not only here directly immediately in Jackson, but the Madison County area and then throughout our 14 counties total.
Okay. And people can also donate goods. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me kind of clarify that. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Okay.
A lot of people assume that we might even be open to the idea of clothing donations, some different sheltering item donations. Actually, we are going to encourage you to go to our good partnership with the Goodwill.
Okay.
They are absolutely funded for that. They have the staffing for that. We simply do not. And so we have made sure to align ourselves with those partners where that is what they do day in, day out, where we, accentuate the shelter, helping provide the meals through our partnerships. We want to make sure clothing donations and those sheltering items can go directly through the Goodwill.
Okay. You also, other ways that people can donate is by sponsoring events.
Yes. In fact, one of the things I failed to mention earlier, if you wanted to be even like a monthly contributor or donor, is there will be choices on our webpage to go in and actually do disaster relief funding, to go in and do just Red Cross in a more general sense so that, any event that were to occur, even local house fires, local flooding, where your money can go even more locally streamlined. We allow opportunities for that as well.
Okay. Also, people can make a matching gift. Businesses and people can.
Yes,
match.
Absolutely. And let me give my direct cell number.
Okay,
I think this is probably as good enough a time as any.
Right.
If you are part of corporate America out there, and especially local corporations, I would ask you to call me directly at area code 901. That's a 901 versus 731. 901-208-0152. And that's my, David Hicks, that's my direct line cell number through the Red Cross. And I would be more than happy to talk about other opportunities of giving, memorials, matching gifts. That's why I'm here. Man, that's what I do as executive director.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been David Hicks, the executive director of the Midwest Tennessee chapter of the American Red Cross. Don't just watch this show. Volunteer, get on American Red Cross, and find out how you can help others, because you never know when you may be the person that's in need. We like to also, I'd also like to remind you, this being a September show, that September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and we just want to donate and fundraise and participate in events that St. Jude is giving or hosting. In order to end childhood cancer, because, it's a cruel thing for kids, who aren't able to be kids because of the cancer that they're battling. In order to find out ways to help, you can visit stjude.org. I also like to thank the sponsors of the show, Baskerville Funeral Home, Styles Menswear, R&R Custom Wheels and Tires, and the City of Brownsville. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you tuning into the show, and we hope you have a great day. We'll see you next time. Thank you.